What up, people? Boy, do I got some cool for you. Man, I need to make a definitive intro. Whatever, that can come later. You saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, and hopefully you took the time to subscribe since this obviously caught your attention. This video is about evolutions, sort of. The concept of EEVEE really interests me. The only Pokemon that could turn into more than 3 separate evolutions, each being their own independent type. Though, we are still missing a couple of types. Where the hell you at, Nintendo? Nintendo? Huh. Sureiku. As I've said before, EEVEE as a Pokemon is a great concept. So I wanted to take that same concept and apply it to one of my own Pokemon. This video will be quite lengthy, so I will be brief on the art notes and speed draws. Now, I will not be using anything even related to EEVEE besides the concept of it turning into different evolutions with their own independent type. Now, I went scrolling through just a bunch of cute animals to find something that's different from EEVEE's animal. And initially, I came across the capybara. And like, look at these guys. But I wanted to go deeper, get something more unique to use as a Pokemon. And I found one of my favorite animals from doing this decision. The Paca. Perfect. Look at this. Look at this man, this distinguished fellow. Perfection. Now to make the actual Pokemon. The first Evo will be just a little sleepy guy. He's tired and is catered to all the time by his pack. The adults providing more intensive care than they can provide for themselves, which inevitably leads to trouble down the line for them if they are lost or even watched. Here we have Pacaby from Paca and Baby, a normal type. Pacaby are almost always sleeping, though not to the extent of a Snorlax, however. This little guy's body is so squishy that they can easily lay down on their mother's backs and never fall off. Its only ability is thick fat because, well, it's a big old baby. It's a big old baby, look at him. If you remember back to my early Root Pokemon video, you might have seen me mention Pacaby's name in Porcupin's Depths. This is the hunter versus prey dynamic that I have established between the two lines. You also might have heard me say the name of another Pokemon, so let's get onto that one. This next Evo is the evolution that sets up the multiple evolutions. This is the real EEVEE, quote-unquote, of this entire line. This is Multaca, the terrain Pokemon. As the species name implies, Multaca has EEVEE's peculiar ability to have several evolutions, though all of its evolutions differ on its terrain type. The terrain type is just where you find it. For example, if you found your Multaca or Pacaby in a forest, it takes on those properties of the forest and adapts it into the design of the next evolution that it's in. Speaking of, the first Evo is based on the forest biome. The goal of it was to make it look like it could blend into the surrounding foliage, like trees or bushes. This one, I imagine, is the best evolution that effectively hides from Porcupine. Multorest, the ghillie Pokemon. Multorest grew to adapt to look almost completely similar to the foliage around them. Porcupines have to search for hours just to find a Multorest. Sometimes, the Porcupines find out that the entire time, they were finding something that wasn't even there. From here on, the Multevos get pretty big. Multorest being one of the smallest guys here. I'm really happy with the shading on this one, especially on its front paw. I mean, look at that. Look at that esteemed fellow. This next Evo is now going to be further underground, based on moles. You can usually find this Pokemon in caves or random dugouts in the ground on the roots. This is one of the Multevos that got a redesign, because the initial design looked a little too static to be anything interesting. Here is Multurrow, from Multaca and Burrow, the ground evolution. Every Multevo is evolved to survive porcupines. This one survives underground, but from its habitat being in places absent of light, its eyesight is very poor. Its claws, however, are made to dig in the dirt and through threats. Now we go even deeper, but not in the ground. This design, I say, is one of the most dynamic out of the early designs. Although there are some things I would change about it, but I didn't redesign it. This is one of the few designs, actually, that I really enjoyed and left alone. It's given several spines and fins to make it swim faster than it can run. Steer clear from the jaws of a Multocean. Just kidding, it's not hostile. Multocean can swim faster than racing boats, making them ideal for water travel. They do prefer to stay in the water, not just because of porcupines, but also because they hate when their skin dries. Now, away from the oceans, but we're still going somewhere full of moisture. The swamp was an interesting idea for me to create. The first design had it covered in mushroom stalks, and it looked very sleepy. But I wasn't too fond of the design, mainly because of the torso having too much depth. Plus, most of the older designs were from before my art style really began to transition to Pokemon. It just looked pretty because this was early designs. I have many sons, very many, and this is one of them. My boy Multwamp is the poison type of the Multevos. Multwamp releases spores into the air to protect themselves from predators. The spores causes various effects, usually putting Pokemon to sleep. The spores doing the same to Multwamp, so it is always found sleeping in the mud. Since it was a misunderstanding, this is the poison type symbol, not the dragon type. I gave the symbol a Cubone skull because of the lore behind the Cubone. Anyway, the rest of these evolutions will take place somewhere or other in the mountains. This one is found at the very top of them, sometimes in the sky. This Multevo is and probably will be my least favorite, no matter how many redesigns I will give it. It's almost like Pacas aren't made to have wings. Multaero, the fur flyer Pokemon. Multaero can easily evade predators by simply flying away, but due to its playful nature, it thinks predators are friendly, which led to their endangerment. When a storm arrives, there's a very rare occurrence that a Multaka can harvest it. This is the last design that wasn't redesigned, because I was super happy with how this one turned out. Granted, it does have a lot of elements that are super similar to Jolteon. Nintendo, no! Ah! Multage, the voltage Pokemon. Legend says some Multaka utilized pure lightning instead of a thunderstorm to evolve into a Multage. Multage holds enough electricity to power large cities for years. This one has half to do with the mountains, only because it can get incredibly cold the farther up you go. Otherwise, winter is its home place. The first design looked very blank and very uninteresting. It just looked like a furrier Multaka. So in this redesign, I made its front paws in the ice, and its pose a lot more stance up and stoic, which really helped with its design to make it possibly my favorite design out of all of these. Another son. God, I have a lot of children. Multundra, the Frost Guard Pokemon. Multundra is usually the only Multevo that fights back against predators. Its frozen paws are blunt yet sharp-edged at the claws, as well as having enough strength on its own to break bones. In case Multundra has to retreat, it can use its claws as ice picks to climb. Now, we talked about how the Multaka is hunted down by most Pokemon, most famously Porcuhunt. What happens to the ones that meet their end due to these conditions? Well, most don't live in peace knowing that Porcuhunts live gluttonously off of them. They seek vengeance, most of them at least. Finally, Multergeist, the vengeful Pokemon, a pure ghost type. Some viewers must think, if you've seen my previous videos, why isn't it fear type if not ghost? Well, the reason is because I can't find for a justification to put fear type is a type in the Keiho, despite it being a really good idea to me back then, so it just doesn't exist anymore. Cobrage is now a fire dark type, and Doctro is a flying poison. Multergeist is the incarnation of the hunted souls of Multakas and Pacabys. They gather into one Multevo to hunt the ones who ended their lives. Typically, their efforts drive Porcuhunt and Quill Raid insane. Multergeist has a unique evolution requirement. This requirement just so happens to be that you must have 2 fainted Multaka in your party. Their souls converge into a Multergeist. You don't get 2 Multergeist from this, unfortunately, just 1. Man, this video has been a long time coming after my subtle foreshadowing of it in my Route 1 video. I loved designing and redesigning these innocent little boys, except for Multergeist, but we love him. It's only a matter of time before Keiho gets itself into horror instead of creating cute little fellows. Time to write more scripts and evade Nintendo. If this is your first time viewing, take a look at my past videos, and if you keep coming back, please subscribe and support my hobby. Now, take care now.